Right, so how about that ending for the House of Dragon finale? Episode 10, guys. We're here to recap, review, and break this down. We've got quite a bit to talk about, especially since this episode leaked a bit early. I was seeing a bit of discourse on the internet, and I knew the events that would take place in this episode were going to be very interesting, to say the least. And the reason why I'm talking about the leak is because some people were kind of saying how, oh, I don't know about that. I don't like how that went down with Aemond. There is some changes with what we're going to get into with that big moment at the end, and I'm going to definitely ask your thoughts about that down in the comments below. I didn't watch the leak. I waited until today to do this review. I've just got back from watching the episode, so welcome to the channel, guys. If you're brand new here, what we do is we go through the House of the Dragon episodes weekly, break them down, and just kind of nerd out together. So if you like what you see here, do consider subscribing. I have plenty of other kind of videos that you'll probably be interested in, and I noticed that a ton of you who watch these videos every week aren't actually subscribed, so maybe today is the day you might want to subscribe. Who knows? But let's pick up right at the beginning, and this is, of course, at Dragonstone. This is when Rhaenys, of course, arrived after escaping King's Landing last episode. She was more or less kept prisoner. They didn't want anyone to go to Dragonstone to inform Rhaenyra that her father had died, and they basically usurped the throne, even though, to be fair to Alicent, she believes that King Viserys did say that Aegon should take the throne, so it is all one big, I suppose, miscommunication. Either way, though, with Rhaenys' arrival, we have Rhaenyra learn about all of this, and this is where things step up to really propel what happens in the future to begin. And the thing is with Daemon, there's also a lot of commentary ever since this leaked as well. I feel like we're going to keep going back to that because, as always, adaptations aren't copy and paste. That's one thing I always say here, covering shows, movies on the channel. If you're familiar with the source material, sometimes they change things up. And what's most interesting about, the Dance of Dragons and everything like that is that a lot of this is somewhat recordings of history adapted into what we see here. So, for example, with the moment later on with Aemond, some people are feeling, oh, I don't know about that. He was very evil, and we will get into that. And in here, with how they've portrayed Daemon on the series, being in love with Rhaenyra, really holding in high regard, sure, seeing a bit of the arsehole side to him. From this moment onwards, I do not particularly mind the decisions that they made with his character, and we're going to visit that particular one a little bit later with that scene with Rhaenyra. I just feel like what we're seeing here is Daemon, after learning that King Viserys, his brother, is dead. God knows what's going through not only his head, but Rhaenyra's head, considering that they have learned that Alicent has usurped the throne with Aegon sitting on the Iron Throne. Not that they know that Viserys, in their mind, said that Aegon should take the throne, even though they completely misinterpreted that. It's just, I feel like Daemon here is completely, for lack of a better word, triggered, and he's now hell-bent on getting that revenge. And this is leading to quite a bit of impulsiveness. We have Rhaenyra in this moment giving birth. This ultimately leads to a very tragic stillborn birth, and Daemon didn't even go to her when she was calling him because he was just hell-bent on preparing the war plans or just organizing what houses we can ally to their cause to regain the Iron Throne. Call upon the lords who swore those oaths to Rhaenyra and everything like that. But some people saying that was uncharacteristic. Some other people argue that after going through that with Rhaenyra, that could have had something to do with it because he was by her side when the Maester was talking to him. Sure, you could throw that in the mix, but to be honest, I think in this moment Daemon does care, don't get me wrong, but is way too, or should I say has just way too much tunnel vision for the anger that is currently boiling inside him. This is when Sir Ulrich arrives. We can't forget last episode he went along with his brother to find Aegon, but he wasn't too happy with Aegon being the ruler. His brother, on the other hand, doesn't mind following orders, but it seems on his way out to Dragonstone, he was able to get King Viserys' crown, and in this moment swear his allegiance to Rhaenyra. And this is where Rhaenyra is officially crowned queen, at least to those who recognize her as such. Everyone in this moment bends the knee, but it kind of made me laugh a little bit how Rhaenys didn't. Even though Rhaenys is basically on her side, and I know she's waiting for Corlys to finally press the button on if they're gonna lend the Valyrian fleet to them, but still, in this moment, she is the only one who didn't bend the knee, technically, and I like what you can read between the lines there. It's not like she is queen, but I feel like there's this respect between them in how she should have been queen, and I feel like even though she will never be the queen of Westeros, she still, I don't know if I would say she holds herself in that stature, but she doesn't feel like she needs to bend the knee. There's this somewhat recognition there that if everyone else is to bend the knee, sure, Rhaenys, you can kind of stand. In this part of the episode, we have Rhaenyra actually operating as queen. I kind of like, I wouldn't say it was awkwardness, but in that moment at the beginning, she walks in, everyone's quiet, and it's like, okay, behold the queen, and she's kind of, you know, feeling it out a little bit. I love the somewhat, I believe it's dragon glass map table and how it's lit up. And here we're going over all of the plans, really trying to figure some things out. They have some men, like Daemon says they have 30 knights, I believe 100 crossbowmen, 300 men at arms, which would be decent enough to defend Dragonstone, but hardly enough to launch a conquest for King's Landing. Daemon is also measuring out their dragons like Syrax, Caraxes. Rhaenyra's sons has Viramax, Arax, and Tyraxes. Baelor has Moondancer, and there's a few other dragons that are unaccounted for. For example, Daemon later on actually goes to get King Jaehaerys' old dragon, who is technically the second oldest dragon, second to none other than Vhagar, of course, because she's a bit of a granny dragon, as everyone is making memes out of right now, such as Aemond saying, I want you to take his eye, and Vhagar saying, you want him to die? Oh, okay. You're going to see lots of that on the internet for the next couple of years while we wait for season 2. But I do have to acknowledge, Vermithor looked incredible. Obviously, King Jaehaerys' dragon, and he is going to be very formidable. That's practically all we saw of him this episode. It's a bit of a bookmark to put in the book for season 2. Now, when acknowledging oaths that were taken, such as Baratheon, but also Stark, we do get a reference to Winterfell. They say there's never lived a Stark that forgot an oath, and with how Stark the North will follow, we will most likely be going to Winterfell at the very, very early part of season 2, likely with Jace going there, and that's going to lead down a certain storyline with who we might meet there. But this is when a ship arrives, and it is none other than frickin' Otto. Just like what we saw before when Rhaenyra was younger and how she just flew out of nowhere, landed, and got the dragon egg back from Daemon all of those years ago. Here she arrives again, and it is quite tense. Again, you think the audacity here, but what other choice does Alicent and King Aegon have to do than offer the terms? If anything, it's going to Alicent's favor, because last episode we had Otto and Alicent trying to rush and race to get Aegon's influence, because we know that Otto just wants all of Rhaenyra and her children dead, doesn't want any challenge to his reign as king, whereas it seems it's gone Alicent's way, as she did get there first, and he is offering terms as a result. Ultimately, though, this just triggers Daemon even more, because the terms were quite funny, even saying that, yeah, the kids, will be cupbearers, a squire, and we got that comment from Daemon, which was a badass line. I'm not gonna lie, I'd rather feed my sons to the dragons than have them carry shields and cups for your drunken usurper. See you next Tuesday of a king. So yeah, gotta love Daemon. This is when Otto calls upon the Maester to bring something from Alicent to Rhaenyra, and it is none other than the page that Rhaenyra tore out of the book when they were kids in the first couple of episodes, and it's just meant to be a symbol for she doesn't forget the love that they once had for one another, which is ultimately the long-term tragedy of this show. A lot of this stuff shouldn't have happened. It's just down to what I said earlier, miscommunications, or technically with Aemond doing this big first stroke of war, didn't actually intend to kill Lucerys, which is arguably seen different in the books, but we will get to that. But yeah, it was a nice moment, but also a bit of a heartbreaking moment, especially when Rhaenyra, what we have to remember, doesn't know that Alicent is acting off what she thinks Viserys wanted with his dying words. The thing is, Otto Hightower's last words of how no blood need be spilled, let's carry on in peace, does ring true a little bit with Rhaenyra, because this is the good thing about her being a queen. She wants to be queen, she has been usurped, but she doesn't want to do anything she feels like a father would disapprove of. And this is where Rhaenys tells her husband, Corlys, later on, about how she's the only one to be hesitant when everyone is urging her to bring war to Westeros, that Rhaenyra is thinking of her duty? Do I just, burn everything to ash and bone just to get on the Iron Throne like Daenerys kind of did? Or do I, really try and be a queen who stays off this? Now, this does trigger Daemon, as we know, even more. As Rhaenyra said earlier, like he's gone to madness. This is not obviously an excuse, but it's the excuse that we have for the characteristics he's displaying during this episode that some people have a problem with. I genuinely think with all the drama and stuff between him and his brother, how we always knew deep down Daemon just wanted to be accepted, even from that very speech in the first or second episode when he was brought before Viserys and banished for making a joke out of his son who died. He said how you never called me to be by your side and things like that. So there's a lot there deep down in Daemon that is bringing him to be the character he is, which is what leads us to that moment of where Daemon chokes her. And this is what I think a lot of fans didn't like, saying like, oh, he worshipped Rhaenyra, why would he do this? Without repeating myself too much more, I think it is everything I've been saying. Also, we have Rhaenyra assuming that Viserys told his brother about the Song of Ice and Fire, because she literally says, my oath reaches beyond our personal ambitions, a Song of Ice and Fire, and Daemon's just like, what? And I think that just kind of stings him even more, because we have Rhaenyra saying he never told you, and she almost even laughed a little bit in between, kind of recovering from the choke. Now, after that scene with Rhaenys and Corlys talking about how initially he was just like, yeah, let's not declare our allegiance to everyone, go back home, but Rhaenys is just saying, Jace, Luke, and Joff are claimants to the throne. Those boys will never be safe so long as Aegon is king. They also do touch on their son, Rhaenor, with Corlys saying Rhaenyra was complicit in our son's death. Now, it does make me think if there's going to be any future, story with this in season 2, because in the books he did die. Now in the series, again, another adaptation change here is they sailed off to happiness with Carl. But again, I do wonder if that truth is ever going to be revealed to them, because even if they learned right now, by the way, didn't actually kill your son, it's not like they could easily find him, so surely the news would be a good thing. But either way, it could be handy having him come back, especially with his dragon. But either way, we have Corlys arrive at Dragonstone and say the Valyrian fleet is yours, which is very good because their fleet is unmatched. But not only that, we got a bit of a bomb drop in terms of tactics of how, even though it didn't seem like Rhaenyra had much play here with sacking King's Landing, or at the very least going about it in a way where she could retake the Iron Throne, this is when Corlys announces that as a result of his near death at the Stepstones, the good thing is that they now control them. This time, instead of leaving it defenseless, he's garrisoned full defenses and a territory there. Total blockade can be done with the shipping lanes to King's Landing, and as a result, they can cut off all seaborne travel and trade. And the good thing about this is it's just a fantastic advantage with their efforts to retake the Iron Throne that Alicent, Otto, Aegon, you name it, will definitely feel the effects of. And this is where we're getting to that part of the episode when they're like, okay, let's send some ravens out with everything they're trying to solve with the other houses, the loyalties and whatnot. And that's when Jacaerys does say, hey, yeah, but dragons are faster than ravens. And so we have Luke arrive to talk to Boros Baratheon, and you already see that Vhagar is there. So Aemond is inside, and obviously people who know the source material know exactly what's going to go down. I felt so bad for Luke because he did seem a bit fearful before even going, but he was sucking it up, and then when he got there, he still pressed forward knowing Aemond was going to be in the throne room. And when he did get there, well, it turns out that Aemond, on behalf of the crown, had offered, more things than just saying, hey, and to be honest, I do get Boros Baratheon's perspective. No matter what, you get offered this, you get offered a marriage pact, and then someone else comes in, arguably from your perspective, with a much weaker force to retake the crown, and you're just asking for my allegiance. Why would I go with you when I could go with the actual current crown? Everyone's recognizing Aegon as king. It was announced before the masses of the people of King's Landing. Again, of course, honor and your oath, but yeah, it doesn't look too great. Either way, though, Luke is just like, fine, I'll take your answer to my queen, the queen. And that's when Aemond couldn't hold it in anymore, called him Lord Strong, just to rub in the illegitimacy of, well, the fact that he was Harwin Strong's kid. He removed his eye patch, and it was awesome seeing the sapphire eye in place. I just thought that looked really badass. It was really sweet when he said, I came as a messenger, not a warrior, just saying his very own mother's words that she told him. But Aemond was insistent that he has a debt to pay and he wants an eye for an eye. And this is where all the shit goes down. So essentially, Lucerys gets on Arrax, says to listen, focus, and obey because he knows that trouble is ahead. This is where I think things get a little bit muddled for some fans out there, because when we have Vhagar come out of nowhere, we have Aemond maniacally laughing. Now, this isn't to be, misconstrued to the point of where he intended to kill Luke. He is screaming, "You owe a debt, boy." But this is where things get so muddled between the dragons, because Lucerys' dragon, Arrax, decides to frickin' Dracarys Vhagar. Like, what? You saw the size difference. I love the shots, by the way, of Vhagar flying above Arrax. Like, it's insane, the size difference. I don't know what that dragon was thinking, yeah, I'm just gonna breathe fire in this old granny's face who could just chomp me at any second. But either way, technically Arrax, Lucerys did make the first move, even though Lucerys didn't want to do that. But even in this moment, Aemond was just like, "No, Vhagar, serve me." He says he didn't want Vhagar to go out and do this. It was not intentional. No matter what you hear, this was not intentional. Now, what I will acknowledge, in the books, Aemond is pretty damn evil. Like, it was intentional. And this is when in the show, obviously Vhagar is pretty pissed at Arrax and completely disobeys Aemond and goes after Lucerys just as you're in the clear, there's sun, you feel like you're safe, gets completely chomped, and you see the pieces of Lucerys and Arrax fall down to the sea below. And again, the whole time Aemond is saying, "No, Vhagar, no, 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 serve me," but it's not like that even mattered. Now, when I first heard about this over the weekend with how it leaked and how it was adapted, seeing some people being pretty mad about this, I was like, okay, let's see how this goes when I watch it. But the thing is, at least both dragons didn't listen here. That's kind of what I like. And even though this is technically different from the source material as to the way this went down, it is accurate in terms of dragons themselves. It does work in that sense. For example, how Viserys said that the idea that we control the dragons is an illusion. They're a power man should never have trifled with. We've heard the lines before from Daenerys saying dragons aren't slaves. Yes, you can be a dragon rider, a dragon master. They can obey you, but there is every chance in the world that things like this can still happen. And with the way they executed this, with Aemond losing control of Vhagar, even commanding Vhagar, like, "No, no, serve me." And in the books, he deliberately did this and is a lot more evil. Here, they are definitely humanizing Aemond. The memes are funny, I do admit, in terms of how it's just a prank, bro. He didn't intend for this to happen. He was just maniacally going after him, maybe wanted to catch him, take the eye, or at the very least just completely troll him. And that's why he was enjoying the torment here. But he most definitely didn't intend to kill. Like, again, to the people saying, like, bruh, he was maniacally laughing and, so obvious. Why would he say no, Vhagar? No, no. It's so obvious that he didn't intend to do this. But the difference is when Aemond returns to King's Landing, just like what the showrunners say, and it also backs up what I'm saying here. The showrunner says, "I think what you're seeing in that moment, there is the last vestiges in the little boy that's left in Aemond. Maybe he was trying to scare Luke. Ultimately, I don't think he intended to kill him, but now he's done it, and he's going to have to decide if he's going to own it in his traveling back to King's Landing." Now, a similar way in the books, he does come back and he does decide to own it, and here you see that conflict with the way they adapted this. Didn't intend to kill him, but you'll probably see in season 2 when Aemond does come back, even though this wasn't intentional, he will be like, "Yeah, I killed him," and obviously Alicent won't be happy about this. Aegon will be happy about this, but inside, even though he did get some kind of revenge on Lucerys, I guess, repeating myself for the millionth time, he didn't want Vhagar to literally murder the boy. Now again, with the source material, with the recounting of how things, may have happened, it mentions that when Lucerys washed up from the sea after falling out of the sky like that, Prince Aemond was said to even cut out his eyes, but then the book goes on to say in that telling that seems excessive, and some say that the prince survived his fall and swam to safety, but lost all memory of who he was, spending the rest of his days as a simple-minded fisherman. Again, I don't think that latter is remotely true, but this is what that very paragraph I kind of just paraphrased to you is what allows them to choose what they do with this adaptation. So it still happened, but it happened in a less evil way with Aemond, giving him a bit more depth here, because after all, it was the dragons who did this rather than the dragon riders. And yes, even though Aemond is straight up a lot more Voldemort-y evil in the source material, I do personally like this choice, personally, to make Aemond just that little bit more complex and having to deal with the repercussions of this. And this ultimately, as the actor behind Aemond says, really starts that domino effect for the Dance of the Dragons. And as Rhaenyra said early on in the episode, she didn't want to be the first swift stroke of war, and she was going to wait to see what happens, and this most certainly is that stroke. Now, this is at the end of the episode when Daemon arrives and delivers the message to Rhaenyra. I have to admit, this is the only thing I've criticized about the show, not that I think this particular scene needed to be fleshed out with how did they find out that Lucerys was dead? Did Aemond go back to, Boris Baratheon and it just somehow got back to Daemon? It's not like they would have found the pieces of randomly scouting. So, there are blanks like that, which, the more you ask questions about it, the more you do think, how did they actually find out? And how the show kind of just completely skipped past that. I know in between scenes, there's often days, if not weeks, that go by. But yeah, I did find that a little bit odd as to how Daemon would have found out to then go to Rhaenyra, other than just assuming that he's gone missing, because obviously he was meant to maybe have been back by now from just delivering a simple message. But in this moment as well, I do like the way it was shot. You can tell that Rhaenyra gets told, she's kind of recoiling in pain, and then she regains her composure to turn back around to the camera, and there is this fierce look on her face. And I'm kind of with a lot of the fans that say that whatever Rhaenyra does now, completely forgiven. No matter how barbaric it gets, just go ham. I'm with you, Rhaenyra. And as Emma Darcy said in the behind the scenes, this completely changes Rhaenyra's outlook on the world moving forward. So, man, I really like this episode. I'm not gonna lie. I understand people's thoughts on the way certain things were adapted from the books, but I do feel like what this show is trying to do is add a little bit more depth to these characters that maybe not everyone will like, but kind of making it a little bit less black and white from the pages. That in of itself is not so much a novelization in the way that the Game of Thrones is told from George R.R. Martin, but more of like a document that you can study and in these interpretations of history. So it's fair game here, and it doesn't feel like it's been deviated. I feel like this all falls under the line of what I always say is innovation, and innovation that I'm happy with. And overall, throughout these 10 episodes, I've really enjoyed this series. It was a pleasant surprise. Not that I was pessimistic going in. I was kind of cautiously apprehensive and optimistic at the same time, but didn't really know truly what to expect with this Game of Thrones prequel. But I do feel like each and every episode, for the most part, especially as you just build and build and build up to episode 10, has got stronger and stronger and stronger. And it's definitely lent us a cast that has very strong characters, like amazing actors in of themselves. I feel like there is a fresh fandom behind it, and the loyal fandom from Game of Thrones before it that does feel as though, in my opinion, from what I'm observing, has that loyalty and approval where this could have gone a different direction and everyone could have called this Game of Thrones prequel arse. Like, oh, this doesn't live up to Game of Thrones in the early seasons. But I feel like they have, got their seat at the table. And this finale definitely cooks up a lot of excitement for the next couple of years to come. I mean, just think about it. When that season 2 trailer rolls in like a year and a half or so's time, people are going to be very hyped. I'm telling you now. So everyone, all that's left to say is, what did you think of this finale? What did you think of the more specific stuff that we talked about in terms of the execution of certain moments, like I would say Daemon with what we spoke about earlier, but then also the moment at Storm's End with Aemond and Luke? Looking forward to hear any and all of your thoughts. Do stay subscribed to the channel if you hopped on board during this series, because I'm going to still cover House of the Dragon throughout the next couple of years whenever we get some more information, plot teasers, filming updates, and obviously when it comes to it, the trailer breakdown for season 2. Would really appreciate a like if you got this far in a video. As always, links are in the description down below if you want to follow me a little bit more on Twitter or other social media. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you fellow Targaryens and people of Westeros in the next video. Goodbye.